This will be something.
Always is. Even when we think it's nothing.
That's when it's the best. What the hell are we talking about? I don't know. This is when we have a great show.
John puts up with so much.
From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Thursday, September the 13th, the year 2018. And now, here they are with a smile on their face.
Song in their hearts.
And a song in their heart. Mr. James Leon and Mr. Richard Massaro.
Jeez. Wow, that was formal.
Really formal, John.
That was formal. I don't even know where to go with it.
I'm really smiling because all is right in the universe. The Bears didn't win. The Packers beat them. That's the.
And you call yourself a Bears fan?
I'm a Bears fan, but let's face it, the Bears. I would have been disappointed to see the Bears beat up on the Packers. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, I looked at this and I said to you yesterday when we had a phone conversation about the high school reunion, and at least we're not going to talk about anybody dying this week, although there's still an hour. We may wind up doing that anyhow. But I said, geez, it was like, Bears had Aaron Rodgers at quarterback in the first half, and then Moses Moreno in the second half. Moses Moreno, Jonathan Quinn, and if you want to throw in little Larry Rakestraw for those of us who are old enough, to remember him. That's what it. And who?
Kent Nix.
Kent Nix. Hey, I saw Kent Nix come into the game in relief of Jack Concannon, the first game they played in Soldier Field, and threw a touchdown pass to win the ball game.
Yeah, I think that sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
I honestly, Jim,
after Butkus bit Frenchie Fuqua and stole the ball from him.
I know that you didn't get a good chance to look at the paper, but I think it's Mark. How do you say his last name? Potash, Mark Potash, or whatever. Yeah. I think his story on the Bears today was very accurate. And I think the big thing, and I think it's one of his first points, he talks about, gimmicky offense versus a really new type of offense, and felt that this stuff is a lot of what you did in the first quarter was gimmicky. And you know what? Once it got down on the iPads for the Packers, they knew what the heck you were doing. And when are we going to see something basically new? Now, he didn't say all of that, but that's the gist of what he's saying.
Yeah. I'm just glancing at this, and gosh, he brings up Gary Crowton.
Well, Jim, honestly,
Gary Crowton with his wacky offense.
Maybe that's why I tuned into what he had to say, because when I started to think about Charles Leno being split out to the right and some of the stuff I saw, I'm going, is this Gary Crowton type of stuff?
Yeah.
When I thought about it, now I wasn't thinking that as I was watching the game, but later on as I reflected on it, I go, yeah, it is sort of Crowtonish. And I honestly, when we talked, and I've talked to several other people about the game, I see really nothing new in the offense. And I think, I don't know if it's in his story or one of the other stories I read, very few targets for Miller, Robinson, and Gabriel, or Burton.
I'll tell you in a second. Let me open up the magic machine and see if I can get to that point.
I would say, I think what I had heard is they had less than 10 targets between them, say, the Burton, Gabriel, Robinson, and Miller.
No, I think it's more than that. I'll tell you in a second here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Robinson targeted 7 times.
Okay. How many times did he get
4 receptions.
Okay.
Gabriel targeted 5 times, 5 receptions, 25 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Howard, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 25 yards. Cohen, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 16 yards. Burton, 6 targets, only 1 reception. Miller, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 14 yards. Sims, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 9 yards. Burton, 1 target, 1 reception.
You know what, Jim? We're really not throwing the ball down the field very much, are we?
No. You know what? I mean, your average yards per attempt was less than 5. Not per completion, per attempt.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that they pointed out was that they compared this game to the last game that, let's see, was it the last? No. I think they compared it to the first game where Nagy was the quarterback coach for the Chiefs, which is not an accurate comparison.
No.
But what they did compare is the number of yards gained on passing plays in the first half in that game compared to the second half, and what it was a lot more yards gained per attempt or per completion in the first half than in the second half. I think what you saw, Jim, is the Bears just. And again, I'm not going to knock it because you have to make a decision. Are you going to keep throwing the ball and take the chance of it being picked, or are you going to try to run the ball and keep the lead that way? And sometimes they both can work, but it seems to me what everybody wants to say is that the offense crawled back into their shell after the second half.
They did. They did not. The defense was not prepared for Aaron Rodgers to come back out on that field.
No, I think
I don't think so.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think it is a matter of them not being prepared. I think what it is a matter of the Packers adjusting to what the Bears were doing defensively and defeating it with what they did. The announcers would say, well, Rodgers is depending on the short and the medium range passes because of his knee. I would say they were going to come out and do that regardless because that was the way to negate the Bears' rush. The Bears' pass rush in the first half was excellent, and they had to back that rush off. And I believe that the adjustment at half was to say, okay, we're going to start hitting them with the quick pass, and that's what they did.
Would they have done that if Kaiser was out on the field?
Yeah. I think so.
You think so?
Because that's the way to defeat the pass rush.
Yeah,
I mean, think
true.
of the '85 Bears with Dan Marino in the one game they lost.
Yeah,
that's how you beat the ferocious pass rush. I mean, it does that. It's
true.
It doesn't work every time, but it worked.
Yeah,
it worked this time.
Yeah, you're right.
It works when you have Dan Marino or Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it doesn't work with Moses Moreno or might not have worked with Deshaun Kaiser.
I think the other thing.
You're interesting that game you referred to with Nagy when he was the quarterback coach at Kansas City that first season.
Mm-hmm.
3 touchdowns in their first 6 possessions, followed by 7 consecutive punts, and they beat whoever they beat
28-2 or
28-2.
Yeah,
but they finished 21st in yardage, but 15th in points.
Well, I am waiting to see, Jim. We've heard during the. But before I get into that, let me say this: the other thing about going back to the Bears' defense in the second half, and I will say I had had a few drinks, so I could be, that could be affecting my vision or something, but. I would say this. One of the things that did happen.
You get much smarter then, don't you realize that?
But I think I'm right on this, and I haven't heard anybody comment about it. But I want to say in the first half, the Packers had to double Mack. In the second half, when he ran out of gas, because he definitely did run out of gas, Bulaga was blocking Mack by himself.
Bulaga looked like a Hall of Famer.
Well, Balaga's an excellent. I'll tell you what, Bulaga.
He's a great lineman,
and Bakhtiari are both really good linemen.
Yeah.
And once they started to be able to block him with one guy, there's another effect that it had on our pass rush because now everybody else is being blocked efficiently. Let's put it that way. You don't have to double Mack anymore because he's out of gas, and that hurt our pass rush.
Yeah.
But I think I was going to say is all during training camp from the Bears beat writers for the Sun-Times, Anthony Miller, oh my God, he's the real deal. Well, the real deal, they threw the ball to him twice. Or was it four or five times? No, twice.
Three.
Right? 3 times.
3 times. He had two catches.
And for what, 14 yards, did you say?
14 yards.
14 yards.
And 11 of those came on one play.
And I'm going to make this statement. I'm going to tell you right now, Trey Burton, and great, seems like a great young guy, very well spoken. I think he's a good football player. But I think I said on this show after they signed him, the reality is he was the 3rd tight end for the Eagles. Everybody is making him out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread in Chicago.
Because of one play.
Because of one play where he wasn't even the receiver.
That's right.
He was the thrower.
That's right.
But I'll say this. One of the things that gives me some hope for the Bears to look better offensively is when Daniel Brown gets healthy again. And Shaheen, if he comes back this year, I think you'll see a better-looking Bears offense because one thing that I do know about Nagy is he likes to use the tight end. And I'll say that. I'll make this statement. I think Daniel Brown may be the best receiving tight end that we have. When Fox was the coach, I wanted to see Brown used more. I think with Nagy, I hope you'll see him used more. And at least what I think will happen, one of the things I did see, too, I like the fact that they threw to Deion Sims a few times, and they actually threw to him downfield once.
3
and
times.
I think, but he was out on a longer pattern at least one time.
Okay.
And
I
but
think
the ball hit him in a
yeah.
bad spot. It hit him right in the shoulder pad.
Yeah,
so,
you're right. I do remember that. No.
But I'd like to see that happen, even if he's not going to catch the pass, because I think then the defense has got to at least pay attention to him. So I like that type of thinking. So I'm not going to, throw this whole thing, the baby out with the bathwater. But I will say the jury is definitely still out on 2 important people, Nagy and Trubisky.
Absolutely, although you listen to the meatball callers. This is terrible. This is horrible. Get rid of him.
Yeah.
Get rid of him. He's a
that ain't
failure. Write him off right off Trubisky right now. And I've got, no.
No, but I think
is he a quarterback yet? No. Is he an athlete? Yes.
I think the biggest problem Trubisky's going to have, and he's going to continue to have it throughout his career unless he changes it.
Happy feet?
Is no. I think the biggest problem he's got is that the beat writers, at least for the Sun-Times, I don't read the Trib, have built this guy up so high as being the next, and hey, you know what? I don't dislike Ryan Pace. I like a lot of what Ryan Pace does. But I think they're drinking the Ryan Pace Kool-Aid when they because Ryan Pace has got to be telling these guys, or somebody's telling them, how great Trubisky can be. And I'm not sure that Trubisky's ever going to be great, and that is going to be a huge stumbling block for him. Now, if he starts to be, as you say, a good NFL quarterback, maybe that's all we can expect from Trubisky.
Maybe so.
That again, he's going to have to deal with that perception that he's never as good as he was built up to be, and that's not a good thing.
Everybody's going to look and say, "My God, you were the 2nd pick in the draft. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah,
and they're going to compare and say, "Oh, Pat Mahomes."
Pat Mahomes looked really good at his first game.
Looked really good. 15 out of 27, 256 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. And Jim, though, that's not. I mean, they didn't ask Mahomes to do a ton. 27 passes is not a lot of passes.
No. And you looked at, and you had to look Monday night at Darnold, who was 16 out of 21 when the Jets-Detroit game, 16 out of 21, 2 touchdowns.
You know what I like about Darnold's performance there is his first pass was a pick 6, which could have led to disaster. And you know what? He righted himself.
Yeah.
He came back and played a strong game.
Played a really strong game.
Yep.
And I'm trying to figure out a team that was 9-7 the last 2 years and got their coach fired. How bad can the Lions actually be?
You know, I'll tell you what, Matthew Stafford is one of my favorite players. I mean, Matt Stafford is a guy I've seen, he throws blocks. I think he's a tough guy. When you get Matt Stafford on his game, he's excellent. But he threw 4 picks in that game.
Yeah.
And I don't care, who the quarterback is. You throw 4 picks in a game, you're probably going to lose. Yeah. So, and who did they play Monday? Or was it the Jets they played,
Jets
right?
Got blown out.
Actually, I thought I read that the score was even at the end of the third quarter, and then the Jets just rolled them.
It was 17-10 at the half.
Okay.
And the Jets scored 31 points in the third quarter.
In the third quarter, okay.
Yeah.
All right, in the third quarter.
The Jets, the Jets went berserk in the third quarter.
Jim, when I asked you before the show about Mario Addison, who's the defensive end for the Panthers, and it mentions in that little part of Potash's story, Captain Munnerlyn picked up. I think he picked up a ball that a forced fumble that Addison forced, and it sounded. I think he ran it in for a score. Captain Munnerlyn played at one point for the Vikings.
Yeah.
Now he's with the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that people don't give enough weight to is guys like Captain Munnerlyn, who's a good NFL player. Those guys have a tendency to switch teams. I mean, I haven't read anything about it, but how many guys who are, let's say, free agents, but they're not your top free agents, are with the Bears this year as opposed to being with another team last year? Now, he's not new this year, but take a guy like Eric Kush, who's been with other teams. You look at, let's see, who else would be? Josh Bellamy has been with the Bears a while, but he's played with other teams. There are guys like that who switch, and I think those are big reasons why, say, a team like the Jets, who didn't do well last year, may do better this year, because those guys who are just sort of nameless faces but are still solid players and can give you some good play, they switch, and all of a sudden your team isn't like, okay, it's not like you signed Aaron Rodgers to a free agent contract, but you just signed a good NFL player and you made an area of your team stronger, maybe an area that really needed to be addressed. And that's why you see teams, I think, constantly, you'll see every year a team going from, say, 4 or 5 wins up to, maybe 10 or 12 wins because of those, I'll call them little subtle changes of scenery for different guys. And I think that's the big thing. You say, what happened to the Jets? I mean, is Darnold that good? Well, yeah, maybe Darnold's good, but maybe there's other guys who contributed, and you don't even know their names, but they're solid guys who went from this team to the Jets.
They're solid guys, and some of the articles I read about that game from the Detroit paper. One of the articles that I picked up out of the Detroit paper, just absolutely blasted Jim Bob Cooter, who was the holdover. He was the offensive coordinator.
For who's
it with? The Lions.
For the Lions, okay.
Yeah. And just talked about the fact that, good Lord.
Well, Jim, there's another thing, though. Jim Bob Cooter, if I do remember, was a guy who was a fairly hot prospect for a head coaching position after last year. Now, did Jim Bob Cooter all of a sudden become a dummy? I don't think so. But, what do you think about it? People have a really skewed idea of professional sports. It's, like last night in the Cubs game, I don't want to get off football, but, Quintana pitched a great game. You know what? Maybe prior to that, or maybe, games after this, he'll have a stinko game. It doesn't mean that he's a great player because he pitched a good game last night. It doesn't mean he's a lousy player if he pitches a bad game two games from now. It's they're human beings, even though they're talented human beings, and their performances, whether they're coaches, players, or whatever, go up and down.
Some days it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I mean, I was thinking of the quote, and you can apply it to, football. I was thinking of a quote I heard from Theo Epstein. He said, sometimes that no matter how much you work in the preseason, in the off season, how many times you set up your roster, how many computer simulations you do, and you think, I've got the perfect baseball team. Baseball sometimes just doesn't baseball.
Yeah.
Football sometimes just doesn't football.
Yeah.
And I mean, a quote that I again picked up from one of the Michigan papers. In fact, it was from the State News in Lansing on Sunday after the Michigan State game on Arizona at Arizona State Saturday night. He said, I think the writer said something to the effect that Michigan State is not what Michigan State thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
He said, as a matter of fact, Michigan State is not what anybody thought they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's, no matter what you do, you think you've got everything worked out. But somebody's going to have a counter for it.
Yeah, I agree. You won't hear me praise sports writers or broadcasters very often, but one thing, God bless them, the sports writers and your TV and radio people will take a shot at forecasting what a team will do. It's a tough thing to do. It's part of their job. They have to do it, and it's a hard thing to do. So, like when you say Michigan State was not what a lot of people thought they were, yeah, I get that. People are going to make mistakes. They look, they say, "Man, this looks like it could be really good," and then all of a sudden the games start, and maybe it's not as good as you thought. So
no, I mean, I went back from watching their first game, their opener, and I thought, my God, this defensive backfield is awful.
Mm-hmm.
They were up against a hurry-up offense, and I don't think they could get themselves ready and get set. I didn't watch very much of the game Saturday night against Arizona State, but the first impression that I got, and it was kind of upheld in the what I read about it after the game, was their offensive line has got some issues.
Yeah.
So, football just doesn't football.
No. Jim, it's when I remember when if I had a big game to play or something, there was a time when I was younger when I would just, I might get to the park early. I might try to psych myself up, and then I would play Stinko. And then I realized, what? Just go through your day, get to the park, play the game, just let it sort of happen, and that was best for me. I mean, it's not best for everybody. I guess my point is, what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's approach is a little different.
Everybody's approach is a little different, and it's totally unrelated to sports. And I only started reading the book because he passed away just recently. But Burt Reynolds,
okay,
has got a book called "But Enough About Me."
Mm-hmm.
When he's talking about people, I would recommend. By the way, I'd recommend the book. There's some really good stories. Some of them are just really laugh out loud funny.
Okay.
But he talked about when he started to act, and it's a lesson that he tried to pass on to the people when he taught acting.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do a scene, he said, when you do a scene, don't let me catch you acting.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Don't
let me catch you acting. And he thought about, he talked about that. He said there was one of his first plays on Broadway. He had to come out to open up the second act, and he made the fatal mistake of breaking that fourth wall between the stage and the audience, and he looked out at the audience, and he sees Tennessee Williams sitting there, and some other actress sitting there, and Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman sitting there. And the line left him.
Mm-hmm.
The line left him.
Sure.
And he started to laugh.
I could picture this, yeah.
And he laughed and he laughed. He says, until God had mercy on me and gave me the line. And he said, Tennessee Williams came back and he said, my God, young man, that was the most natural thing I've ever seen anybody do like that. And you laughed so long, and I didn't think anybody could do that. I'm going to write a play for you.
When you talk about Burt Reynolds, I thought of another guy, John Wayne. I think they aggravated people a little bit because I think they were both good actors, but I think they were natural about what they did. And so whether you saw Burt Reynolds in Deliverance or Smokey and the Bandit, you saw Burt Reynolds, and that was who he was. He naturally sort of fit into the role. I would say the same with a guy like John Wayne. And I think people who are serious to the point of being anal about it get aggravated about that because they want this is serious stuff. We're serious about this acting, and these guys maybe weren't that serious, but they still could act. And that got people aggravated.
Yeah, and I mean, he talked about the fact that in his book, he talked about the fact that he was always viewed as this angry guy who made bad movies.
Mm-hmm.
Until he got on, he said, until he started to go on the Tonight Show, and would, well, what about your last movie? He said, it's just turkey, don't even bother.
Well, I was surprised. Roper did his obit in the Sun-Times, and I would, Roper having been a critic and everything, I was interested to read what he had to say. But he felt that Reynolds was one of the biggest movie stars of the 70s. Yeah. And when you look at his body of work, he does everything from schlocky stuff like Smokey and the Bandit to something like Deliverance, which is dead-on serious.
Yeah.
And he was, as Roper would put it, he was a movie star.
Right.
Okay,
right.
I was going to say, what do you talk about? Maybe sort of keeping it light, even though this is your job, this is what you do. I've heard different people say about Joe Madden. What is a pajama trip? And he could. Hey,
it was football jerseys on this last one.
When you think about 162 games, and now the Cubs, this is what, the fourth year in a row they've been in the running.
In the running.
So that's what, almost 600 games with Joe as manager. You have to. I think you need to keep it upbeat at least, and I think Joe does a good. At least he tries to do a good job of that. I think if you make it too serious, you're gonna increase the pressure to the point where your players are not going to be able to function the way you want them to. So you have to sort of, in a sense, keep it light. I know people, when people look at the game on TV or they go out and buy a ticket for the ballpark, they want that to be deadly serious competition, and it is, but you don't need to add to that in the clubhouse or in the manager's office.
Okay, so let's take that and look at the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to do after this to make sure that Mark Potash's prediction of a win against the Seahawks comes true?
I think they just need to go out and not be afraid to take some chances. I think the Seahawks are a beatable team, but I think the Bears need to say, we're not thinking as if we're a playoff team yet. So
No.
You know what? We can afford to take some chances. Even if it costs us a game, we're going to take some chances because the approach I like, Jim, is, you know what? Go for it. Even if it ends up with egg on your face, go for it. Because there's a guy that plays softball for us, Billy Wable. We call him Wobble. Billy is a good player. He's not a superstar, but Billy will do some goofy things. Okay, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. When they don't work, you're like, Billy, what the heck are you doing? When they do work, you're like, man, Billy, good play. But the whole point, where Billy's strength is when he does all these things and he takes these chances, it lets everybody else know, hey, guess what? I can take a chance. I can, you know what? It loosens everybody up. It's not like everybody's like, oh, my God, you know what? Because the guy is an upbeat guy. He's a fun guy. And you know what? People, that's so I think you can't be afraid. You can't all be afraid to lose. You have to make an effort to win. And part of that is not being afraid to lose. So you got to roll the dice sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Look at a guy like Baez. Javi Baez is Billy is our Javi Baez. That's what we say. Javi. Yeah. Hey, sometimes it falls flat, but
there you go.
Hey, when he wins a game for you, you love it.
What did you think of the offensive line play?
I thought they were good. I thought they did a good job.
What'd you think of the center?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jim. Here's the thing I can't.
I know he's got the yips.
This isn't just the Bears,
snap.
Jim.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about his problem with his snaps, but I'm going to talk about what little I read about the NFL. It seems to be a trend that the center and the guard position seem somehow now to be interchangeable on a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? I mean, to me, here's the other thing. Unless they're looking at Daniels and just say, okay, he's a young guy and he's not ready, why not put Daniels at his normal position and put Whitehair at his normal position and let them play where they've been basically trained to play? And do that. I don't get. I understand that Whitehair was plugged in there at a point when I think it
was injury issues.
Well, I think
that
Grisou
got hurt,
and Whitehair was the guy that got plugged in. But why that had to stay that way, I don't know. And obviously, he's got problem. It wasn't a continuous problem through the game, but there was one point in the game. I can't remember. It might have been the first half, where there was a whole series. He had nothing but high snaps.
I know. I remember one. I remember one in the second half, where
could have been the second half.
I do remember one for sure in the second half where Trubisky had to jump. To get it.
And it's critical for the timing. Even put it this way: it doesn't matter if it's a run or a pass. It's critical on the timing for a run, because obviously those plays are timed up, the exchange between the quarterback and the running back. And also critical for the pass, because once you have the quarterback has got to concentrate on controlling the snap, he's really not seeing the field soon enough. And, that can be critical as well, because he needs to see those receivers as quickly as possible, so he can
do his
reads and all that.
Whatever he needs to do.
It's a critical part of the game.
Yeah.
And how they can continue to let it happen is beyond me. I mean, he may be doing a great job of blocking, but that snap is critical. So, and I noticed the other thing is, I think it was toward the end of the game, they got to a point where I thought they might be lined up in the nickel or the shotgun or whatever. He had to get under center, because I'm pretty sure the reason he was under center was they weren't trusting the snap anymore, and they needed to make a play at that point.
Play. Yeah.
So
yeah, it was interesting. I happened to glance down here at one of Potash's points, and he said that the rookie center James Daniels, who turns 21 on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday, James Daniels.
Yeah.
Played 5 special team snaps on PATs and field goals against the Packers. He's the 7th Bear to play in a game before turning 21. Fullback Andy Livingston, who returned to kickoff 86 yards for a touchdown against the Vikings at Wrigley Field 7 weeks after turning 20
in
1964, is the youngest Bears player in history. I bring that up because I was at that game.
I remember that game.
Last game of the year, Vikings beat them 41-14.
And Livingston returned that kickoff.
And he also scored another touchdown.
Yeah, he was. Well, I'm not going to get into ancient history, but a really good talent that I believe they screwed up. But
Yeah.
whatever, that happens.
I did not. I guess I didn't even remember that Alonzo Spellman was under 21 when he played his first game, and
yeah, I keep reading that. Yeah,
Rashaan Salam was under 21, and one of the hyphenated defensive backs we had a few years ago, Al Lewis Jean,
yeah,
was under 21.
yeah. And that I saw a name in there that I 1953. Of course, I wasn't aware of what the Bears were, but even in Bears history.
Billy Autry?
Billy Autry, I was not aware of him. I thought I was pretty good on Bears centers because you can zero in on those guys. But
Yeah, I don't remember hearing
that name too much. But he probably didn't have that long of a career. So, and you know what, Danny Fortman, who's a pretty blessed good player,
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Hall of Famer, started at 20 years and
20 years,
6 months or
169 days in 1936.
something. Yeah.
Interesting to find out. You want us to take a break, John?
Okay.
All right, let's do that. I didn't mean to wake you, John.
I didn't know Spellman was that good.
I may have remembered.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Nords, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Thursday, September the 13th with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Jim Leon and Rich Massaro.
Jim,
It was interesting too, and I mean, staying with the Bears, and I didn't realize this until I just looked at this article. The Bears were the only team in the NFL that did not commit a defensive penalty in Week 1.
well, there's one part of the game that I did notice that the Bears
Discipline.
were much better on. They
Discipline,
didn't
much
have very
discipline.
many penalties. When I read that they had even any penalties on defense, I was surprised because it
5?
didn't seem that way.
5 penalties for 35 yards.
Yeah, it was a good.
Very disciplined, which is
That's a good
is
thing.
a plus.
I was going to ask you, Jim. That's going to slip my mind here. No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
have that same problem
Yeah.
now. It's that age thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. I find them very intriguing. Like I said to you, I find them very intriguing to watch.
I've always found them intriguing to watch.
I
That
found
doesn't
them
mean that
disgusting.
they
I
were,
found
you
them.
know-
I found them nauseating to watch. The last.
Well, that's sort of intriguing in a way.
No. You're more of the Rosemary's Baby type. It's so ugly you have to look.
Yeah.
All I can remember is one game, few years back. It was a game that they played in Soldier Field against the Chiefs, and Kyle Ortman.
Kyle Orton. Yeah.
Orton. Yeah, I'm thinking. Wait, I used to hear people
Thank you,
refer
sir.
to him on the score, Orkman.
Ortman.
He was the Chiefs quarterback.
Oh, okay.
And the game was just bloody awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, and I got my Twitter feed open because it's like you're watching a game with 500 friends. One point in time I put a question up, and I got an answer from Peggy Kaczynski from NBC Sports on something. But the two comments I thought were really funny was Dan Bernstein from The Score. He made two comments, one at halftime. He said, "For those of you who went to the bathroom at halftime, stay there." And the other comment that made me laugh out loud, this game is making my television smell.
Jim,
And I look at this, and I told you, I said that they piqued my interest enough that I want to watch them Monday night.
No, I think you might see a really nice game on Monday night. I actually think the Bears as you say, I think they're going to be worth watching. I think if they, and you know what, I'm hoping, Nagy had said, he's going to try not to repeat what happened in that playoff game last year with Kansas City, and he repeated it. Actually, I think that might be a good thing, because now that lesson, if you want to put it that way, is really driven home, because he's taken some flack for it, which is deserved.
Yeah, he deserved it.
But you know what? Now he may actually, when the time comes in the game that, we have another game like this where we have the lead, he may actually think about it and produce a different result. I think that maybe that him repeating exactly what he did or close to what he did in that Kansas City game might work to our benefit in the long run.
Yeah. I look at Potash here, and he's still predicting. He's predicting 8 and
8.
Doable.
Yeah, I think it's doable.
I mean, they can come in. They're very easily can come into the bye week 3-1.
Yeah, I think the big thing is going to be how is. Here's the thing, I read somewhere, Jim, where Nagy was preparing his remarks to the team for before the game, and I've read all through training camp, how the team believes in him. Now, he's a big part of the reason that the team lost. One of the huge things that needs to be addressed in this next game is how big of a hit in him, in the team's confidence in him, was this. Okay? Because as a coach, you better back up all of the blah blah that you feed everybody. And you know what? He needs to. Nagy himself needs a really good game this coming Monday night.
He needs a good game.
He needs a big game. He needs a big game.
Yeah, he needs a big game.
I mean, you're talking about a team who has not had a lot of success in the recent past. And okay, we got our new we got our new guy here, and some of the guys who are left over, it's not going to take many games if we have a couple more stinkers for them to say, well, guess what? Same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Yeah. Doug Baldwin is probably going to be out Monday night. One of their Seahawks wide receiver.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, with MCL problem. Screwed up my fantasy team too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, another one screwed up my fantasy team. Greg Olson is out.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have to ask you, Jim. Now I remembered the question I was going to ask. How much in professional sports do you think that comments? Okay, I think Akeem Hicks, and I don't have the exact comment, but last week, after they signed Mack, he basically made a comment about whether Bulaga was healthy or not. Mack would pretty much eat him up. Now, I know that we all, want to think of these guys as professionals, but I think they are. But they are. To think of them as professionals above all of this talk is, I think, ridiculous. And now, if that comment got back to Brian Bulaga, as I watched that second half, and again, I had imbibed a little bit, so I'm probably intuiting some of this.
I find that difficult to believe.
But as I saw Bulaga handling Mack one-on-one, I'm thinking, man, if he read that comment, he's really feeling good right now, because he's handling Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack was a non-factor in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that? Do you think that these guys read these comments? Do these comments get back to these guys?
Some of that, the old thing, that's bulletin board material.
Yeah, I think so.
Some people get fired up about
some
that.
Some do, some don't.
Some just look and go, whatever.
Right.
We talked a little bit about two people yesterday when we were on the phone. Mack being one,
mm-hmm.
with basically practicing 1 week.
Right.
And Roquan Smith basically 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hold out through training camp and then a hamstring problem. They may be in shape, but are they in football shape?
Well,
And can you
Yeah.
define football shape?
well, I this is what I'm going to say. I can't define exactly what football shape is, but I would say I would not be surprised, Jim, if those guys, not that they're not going to perform well in spots, but I would be surprised with the amount of time both of them have missed if you see the best Khalil Mack and the best Roquan Smith that you could possibly see for the whole year, because it's you're not ever really going to catch up totally.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
You lost too much.
Right.
Is the issue regarding, well, just as another point, not necessarily the fact that they missed training camp, is the issue that the first string played so little during the exhibition games going to be a factor? Oh, the only reason I bring this up is Pat Mahomes,
right.
71 snaps in 3 preseason games and threw 40 passes. Trubisky played 40 snaps in 2 games.
And through
18 passes.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's a little bit of, my answer would be it's a little bit of both. I think the idea was to have the team come in healthy. Which they accomplished. Yeah. But when in the case of a young quarterback, which both Mahomes and Trubisky are, I would think you would want him to play, especially with a new offense, new people around them. I think you would want him to play a little bit more than what he played. So it's a double-edged sword. You can't put him out there without the guys that he's going to play with during the season. So now you're putting the whole first-team offense out there and I think if you wanted to put a name to that decision, that name would be Kyle Long. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think they wanted to come in with Kyle Long
In one piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kyle Long, at least when the parts of the game that I watched him, played a really good game. He was strong, and so they accomplished that. But on the other hand, I think Trubisky needed more snaps and needed to play with the guys that he's going to play with a little bit more than he did. So, in one sense, it worked. In another sense, it didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's nice that everybody came in healthy, but
Yeah.
The inexperience may have showed.
You ever see? You know what? Leonard Floyd is one, and Danny Trevathan is another. There are certain guys who just can't help but get hurt. I don't know. I mean, Danny Trevathan. What is this, about the third year he's been with the Bears, and he gets. I mean, thank God when he got injured, it's not serious, and he was able to come back. But when he went down, I'm like, not surprised. Danny Trevathan down on the turf. I mean, and it's not like he's acting. I mean, he genuinely got whacked pretty good. But I'm like, man, some guys just have the injury bugaboo about them.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, how did you think? I mean, Floyd, I thought was pretty much a non-factor. At least,
I thought so too.
I mean, he played with the club and all that, but
I thought he was pretty much a non-factor.
Which, in one sense, I would thank God we got Mack, because if we didn't, I mean, let me tell you, the Bears would have lost that game a whole lot quicker and a whole lot worse if Khalil Mack hadn't had the big first half.
Yeah. Leonard Floyd, 1 solo tackle, 1 assist. Well, Khalil Mack, 2 solo tackles, 1 assist on another one.
The
One
big thing
tackle,
were the turnovers.
one tackle for a loss of 12 yards. Whoop. Now I got to find my way back to that page again.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Interception for a TD and a forced fumble.
Right.
So
I think the forced fumble led to a
came
score.
Yeah. I mean, everything came on one play. He had the sack, a forced fumble, and recovery, I think, too, didn't he?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Amukamara was the leader in tackles.
That's not good.
No. No, 4 tackles and 1 assist. Fuller had the opportunity to seal the game
Well,
if he would have hung on to that ball.
I think that play, as much as any other thing that happened in the game, I saw one comment after the game on the news, where they had people on the sports section, the sport part of the news, tweeted in or whatever comments, and somebody said, "Same old Bears." And I think a play like that, as much as anything else that happened in the game, is the reason for comments like that, because you do have a tendency to say, when the Bears shoot themselves in the foot, they have a pattern, and that's a missed opportunity like that is part of that pattern. Mm-hmm. So that was, everybody will say, we all talk about how great Aaron Rodgers is, but guess what? Aaron Rodgers, if Fuller is able to handle that pass, that would have been a huge boo-boo that would have gave us the game. So you wouldn't have been talking so well about Aaron Rodgers today.
Yeah, that would have been the game right there.
That was the game.
That was the game right there. It would have sealed the game, and we'd be talking a Bears win.
After we talked about this, and I want to maybe talk a little bit about the Cubs or the Sox because we're still in baseball season. But the one thing you and I talked about too is I think that when we had 4th and 1 at the end of the game, deep in Packer territory, and this is not a second guess because I was sitting with Jimmy Cusack, and I said, "Jim, we got to go for this first down. The field goal is not going to help us. You're going to give the ball back to Rodgers with 2 minutes and I think it was 40-some seconds on the clock.
Much too much
That's
time.
way too much time.
Much too much time. I always remember the story about Boomer Esiason coming off in the Super Bowl after he gave a touchdown.
Yeah.
And Sam White, his coach, said, "Good job." He said, "Yeah," but he says, "I gave that damn Montana much too much time."
Too much time. Yeah, there was way too much.
And he took him right down the field and won the ball game.
Yeah. And that's so the field goal, I really hated that because if they're because I'm thinking I'm not saying this was Nagy's thinking, but this is my thinking. Oh yeah, you wanted to show, hey, now we put more points on the board. Well, but I think your strategy was off there. Yeah, I didn't like that. Yeah. So
let's get into baseball.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny. It's kind of fun on Labor Day. Scott Sumner and his wife, and Steve Alsbach and his wife, and Dana and I went to Rosemont to watch the Chicago Dogs.
Yeah.
And we only got to see 2 innings before the rain washed out the game.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm sitting there with Steve, he said, "You doing football anymore?" And I said, "No, and I don't miss it." Mm-hmm. And he said, I said, "Rich and I are doing our podcast." And he says, "Oh." He said, "Need anything from Statboy?" I said, "Anything from Statboy is always appreciated."
Sure.
He said, "Football or baseball?" I said, "Whatever Statboy wants to give us."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "When are you doing it?" I said, "We'll record a week from Wednesday." So I got this on September 7th. After mentioning to Statboy that Yoan Moncada, Giancarlo Stanton, and Joey Gallo have as many strikeouts as did the 1954 Giants.
Holy crap.
He went about his usual mutterings and scurried to the basement. Sometimes later, this came from under the basement door and flipped due to a slight breeze. In praise of Glenn Beckert. Okay, 1968 was the year of the pitcher. We all know that. You had to be really good to even have a winning record. Ahem, Sam McDowell. And we know the accolades that are attributed to the offense. Namely, Frank Howard hit 10 home runs in 20 at-bats. After that, one of the unsung stats, though, is that of Glenn Beckert. In 685 plate appearances that season, he struck out 20 times.
Wow.
Or once every 34 and a quarter at plate appearances. A short homestand or a road trip, if you will. The only person to strike him out more than once that season was Phil Niekro, who got him twice in 14 plate appearances. Gibson, Marichal, and Carlton got him once over a combined 44 plate appearances. Sutton, Perry, Drysdale, Bunning, Seaver, and Ryan never got him that season. That's 5 strikeouts and 118 plate appearances against the Hall of Fame to be pitchers that season. His batting average against those guys was .259. No great shakes, but these are Hall of Famers. At one point, he went a full month, 98 plate appearances from late August to late September without a strikeout.
Man.
He was at his Rob Deeriest in August with 7 Ks sandwiched by 1 K months in July and September. And a quick scan shows that through May, Beckert had 10 ground ball outs where the runner moved up, as well as 2 sacrifice flies. He also reached base on an error. You can't do that with strikeouts. This year's leader at 14.1 at-bats per strikeout is Andrelton Simmons of the Los Angeles Angels. An admirable ratio, no doubt, but a bit ashen when compared to Beckert. And this was with a 15-inch mound and nose-to-toes strike zone. So belated tip of the cap, Mr. Beckert. You did what few others could even approach.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing
yeah.
when you think of the way the game is?
Oh, my God.
The way the game is now?
You know, Jim, I have to add, you mentioned, you mentioned the Chicago ball player and the 3 that were up top there, Moncada, Stanton, and Gallo. What do you... I'll tell you what. I get, that there's points of the game where you want to, take the count, pitcher deep into the count. And the way the game is played today, I guess that's a good thing, and might have been a good thing no matter what area you played in. But this guy, Moncada, I mean, when you talk, everybody talks about the talent this guy has. Well, swing the blessed bat. All right? I mean, because a lot of his strikeouts, he's taken third strikes. He's worse than Santo. Santo took a lot of third strikes.
Yeah.
But Moncada, I mean, what has he got? Has he got 200 strikeouts yet?
If he's not, he's pretty. If he doesn't, he's pretty close to it. Let's see, stats through Tuesday. 196 strikeouts.
Oh, so he's going to hit over 200 strikeouts.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to hit better than 2 1/4 if you're striking out 200 times a year? You're not. You're not good. There's no way you could hit better than that. I don't care. I'm not a mathematician, but you strike out 200 and some times in a year. His batting average is like 225. It's not going to get better if he keeps doing that. There's no way.
It's not going to get any better. But I also look at Baez with 144 strikeouts, and he's hitting what, 291.
Well, if you know what, if you only struck out 100 times and say that 40 so that'd be 40 sometimes he didn't strike out. So what would he do with those at bats? Let's just say
maybe a third of them.
Or let's be real conservative and say he got 10 more hits.
10 more hits out of it,
yeah.
Sure, easily.
So he's over 300.
Yeah, I feel I feel very sorry for the White Sox fans after their prize ball player and their prize pitcher comes up and 4 starts into his career, he goes, you're not going to see him now until 2020.
That's amazing. And they say, I mean, what I've read, they say his form and everything is good. But I'm just thinking I don't know this as a fact. I mean, Nolan Ryan threw hard all the time, so maybe he's not a good example. But I would imagine that the hard throwers over the years, say when they were going to waste the pitch or whatever, might not throw it as hard. You're going to throw it off the plate. Maybe you throw 97. You throw that waste pitch, maybe it's 93. And maybe I'm all wet. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about here. But I think one of the problems is these guys, are throwing as hard as they can all the time, and maybe that's not, maybe that's really not so good for your arm.
No. I mean, the theory, the theory was when we were young watching the game, pace yourself.
Yeah.
Try to get you 7, 8 maybe a complete game.
Right.
And now it's,
Just Katie bar the door
Katie
for
bar
as long as you can do it.
Katie bar the door, and if you can get to the 6th inning, God bless.
Yeah. Man, it's getting shorter and shorter all the time.
It's getting shorter. I mean, I'd love to look and see what the average, what the average start is. It was kind of funny the other day. I was looking at YouTube. Happened to think about it, and I came across the video of Vin Scully throwing out the first pitch at the World Series last year, when he got out to the mound and said, "Oh, I hurt my rotator cuff. I need a pitcher. Is there a left-hander?" And out comes Fernando Valenzuela.
Okay.
And he said, Fernando one year won 21 ball games. Another year he had 20 complete games. There are 20 complete games in the majors this year.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, and I'm not trying to place blame, but I think it's an interesting thing that, at least in the case of Kopech, and Zach Birdie is another pitcher that has been injured. That was a big Sox prospect. Carson Fulmer has not done well. But I found it interesting that Kopech would be hurt, his arm would be hurt, and that his pitching coach at Charlotte is Steve McCatty, who was one of the 4 pitchers in the rotation, I believe, where Billy Martin was criticized, where he took those 4 guys and just rode those guys.
The A's.
And
when Martin managed the A's, yeah.
And, it may just be serendipity, that McCatty is Kopech's coach, but I'm thinking that's an interesting thing, that McCatty was one of those pitchers who Billy Martin rode hard that one season.
Yeah.
And that McCatty was Kopech's pitching coach at Charlotte. I'm not blaming McCatty. I'm not saying that at all, but I just think it's an interesting thing.
And I find it, and I don't know if you can blame the kid for not saying anything, but I did see a quote after this that said, "Well, I noticed my velocity was down."
He did say that, but that's
and
that,
he
that
said,
happens.
"Well, he said I thought maybe it's late in the season, and it's it's just that."
Yeah.
And you realize that in 2 years, when he comes back for the 2020 season, he's going to be on a strict pitch count.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised if they shut him down at some point during the season and say that's it.
Well, see, that's another interesting thing. Is the issue really that he's throwing too much, or is it what you said? Is he throwing too hard, too much?
This is a guy who was clocked at 103.
Yeah, he was
on the gun.
Up there. He was up there.
On the gun. Is the arm made to do that?
Well, I think your point though, Jim, is the more valid one. Not how hard you throw, but
how much
you said pace yourself.
How much you throw too.
I mean, when Fergie Jenkins was one guy that I've read, and Whitey Herzog as a manager was another, who felt that you need to throw more, but it's not a matter of, again, it's a matter of pacing yourself. I mean, it was typical for guys who were in a 4-man rotation, not only to throw their turn, but to throw in between starts.
Sure.
So I think your point is really a great point when you say, okay, you're asking these guys to go out and give everything they had for 5 or 6 innings versus guys who were going 8 and 9 innings in a start and didn't have the problems. What is the difference? The difference is the way they approached it. The difference is you're asking somebody to throw hard as they can for as long as they can versus a guy who's pacing himself, and trying to get through a game. It's a totally different. It's the difference between the 440 and the marathon or some.
No, I mean, yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
A sprint versus a distance run.
Yeah. And it's a whole different mindset. So, and those guys knew, When you watch Fergie Jenkins, Fergie had, in my mind anyway, sort of an easy flowing motion
He really did.
about him.
He really did.
And it never seemed like he was, exerting any great effort. You never heard him grunt or anything like that. But he, as you say, he's pacing himself.
And I don't think. I only watched him briefly. I don't think that there was anything in Kopech's motion. You think, oh my God, he's going to torque that elbow. He's going to do something. When you go back and you look at two prime prospects whose careers never panned out to the way they were, the way that you thought they were going to be, Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor.
Yeah.
Everybody looked at both of them and said, my God, look at that motion.
Mm-hmm.
This is an elbow injury waiting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to emphasize your point, Jim. Though I think pacing yourself is probably part of the, or lack of pacing yourself is probably part of the problem we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think so. Well, pacing ourselves. We paced ourselves right up to just about the end.
Holy crap!
Man, talk about pacing ourselves. I didn't even get to the fact that I was going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves and all the ex-Bulls that are going up there.
Yeah, did you see they just signed, I tell you, one of my favorite guys, and I think a really solid player at the end of his career now, but I think he'll have a positive effect on the team, is Luol Deng.
Yeah, and did I hear Noah is going up there or signed already?
That I haven't heard, but who knows? I mean,
and Derek's up there? Is he
Derek
up there?
I think Derek's still there, John.
John,
So
should we get you?
If you get the NBA package, you can watch Derek as much as you want.
Should we get you a Timberwolves jersey just for Christmas? Yeah, you looking for that?
With a big number 1 on the front.
With a big number 1.
Yeah. Interesting. That is interesting.
Anything else on your mind today, Richard?
I was just going to ask you how do you think the Cubs will do down the stretch?
Why is it, lately I look at this and I keep hearing Bart Simpson in my head going, I got a bad feeling about this.
You know what? I'm calm. I think
I'm trying to be calm. I like the fact that I look at this two games up. I don't think they're going to get that Thursday game in Washington.
Well, you know what? I will say this: I'm calm, but I part of the one thing I am worried about is what MLB's decision is going to be on that game. I hope that they say, to me, you take that game, and if it's needed to be played at the end of the season, that's when you play it.
That's when you play it. Don't screw around.
Yeah,
like
because
this.
Really, what you're telling me is, and I was thinking about this morning. Are you telling me you don't want the Cubs in the play, or at least the number 1 spot in the playoffs again? Because making them fly to Washington and then fly back doesn't tell me anything good about MLB's thought processes.
No, I agree with you. I think they talked about bringing Washington here. They talked about playing on a neutral site.
No, I think play in Washington, but play it if the game's needed. That's all.
I think you're right. I think that'd be a good idea.
Prediction on Monday night's football game with the Bears.
Oh, prediction?
Oh, I thought you were going to give us one.
Oh, okay.
Oh. You want me to be a real meatball? Bears 167, Seattle -4. Actually, I think the game's very winnable.
Yeah.
Game's very winnable.
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is on the game. I'd have to look and see if I would predict they're going to cover. Let me look at that right now, by golly. Go ahead, talk amongst yourselves.
I was going to say, John, I think the Bears can win the game. I think the biggest thing is containing Russell Wilson. I mean, you don't want if our outside guys are really aggressive, they need to be aggressive, but they also need to be keeping Wilson inside the pocket as much as possible.
Yeah. Bears are 3-point favorites for Monday night.
3-point favorites. And what's the over/under?
Don't know.
Do you know? I think the over/under from Sunday night's game, they were right on the number. I think it was 47. They were right on the number. So
Let's see. Anything for those in the wagering lines? Not that we encourage gambling.
that's in the past, Jim.
We don't.
I mean, not gambling, but I mean that I don't think you're going to
No.
find the number in there
No.
for that game. But you're looking for Monday's game?
I'm looking for Monday's game. This is Wednesday's paper. Monday's game.
Yeah.
43.5.
43.5. So they think it'll be. I mean, I'm not going to say a defensive battle, but it's not going to be super high
No,
scoring.
not going to be super high scoring. I think the game is very. I think the Bears game is very winnable.
It is. What do you? I mean, we don't see Seattle that much,
No.
but you just said Baldwin's going to be out. That isn't such a. I don't think that's that big of a problem. But I think Seattle has lost a lot of.
Legion of Boom is.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of their key defensive guys.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a difference.
Yeah,
That's going to be a difference in the ball game.
Yeah.
And I'll give you another thought, and it's too much to go into right now. Is Buffalo really as bad as they look this weekend?
Man, I'm telling you,
A playoff team to get beat by what, 44?
Yeah, they got hammered.
And is Jameis Winston going to get his job back when he gets off suspension?
Yeah, you know what? That's an interesting thing because Fitzpatrick came in and hey, I mean he tore it up. So we'll see what happens the next 3 weeks because I think Winston's out for what 4?
4 weeks. He was out for the first 4 games. Lots of things to talk about, and by golly, it's felt like a month since we've been together doing this again. It'll probably be about another month before we do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good, though.
That sounds good. We'll have a lot of things to talk about.
Hey, you know what? We'll know exactly where the Bears season is headed in another month.
And if I can find if it's derogatory, I'm going to find the Dennis Green soundbite.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or if I can, I'll find Uncle Dougie going, the Bears are who we thought they were.
That's right.
No damn good. All right, let's get out of here. A lot of fun doing this. We had fun. Hope you did. We'll catch you all again maybe about another month or so. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Thursday, September the 13th on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVito, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, September the 12th, the year 2018. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois.